In the shadows of ancient trees and amidst the whispers of the wind lies a legend that is whispered only during the full moon. It is the story of the witch's flower, a mysterious plant with powers we cannot even dream of. It is said that anyone who finds this flower can change their fate, but there is a high price to pay. It was hard to breathe, the invisible noose clenching ever tighter, my throat searing. A few cherished words, the grip loosened. She rolled over onto her back and caught her breath. The light from the street lamps didn't reach the room. The darkness seemed absolute. The apartment was silent. For a moment she thought she saw a shadow flicker in the mirror. No, it didn't. Turning on the sconce above the table in the kitchen, the girl brewed strong coffee, brought books and sheets of paper. She took out a deck of cards and candles. Shuffling the deck, she mentally visualized recent events. The first card that fell out confirmed her hunch. She had been tricked, fooled like a schoolgirl. The entire deck confirmed the blatant deception. Before dawn, she read books on magic, inherited from her grandmother and great-grandmother. Both were Shovihani, and, to the surprise of many, literate. Laki also became a Shovihani, a gypsy witch. She received a higher education and was always learning. She achieved some success in magic and was often asked for help. The girl tried not to refuse help to anyone, and so it was this time. Some time ago she was approached by a girl, Marina, who had been cursed with a witch's harness. Laki removed the harness, but she miscalculated. Marina was not who she said she was. Laki's hands were almost healed. The first days after the hospital she had been working on her health and recovery. She hadn't paid much attention to her hands then, because the scars hadn't gone away yet. A few days later she felt a strange stiffness and weakness. Looking at her hands, Laki was frightened. The black bracelet on her wrist was like a snake wrapped around her arm. A witch's harness. Ada, I need your help. I think I'm in trouble. Laki spoke quickly and was clearly nervous. What's wrong? When are you coming? Tomorrow. I'll be there by tonight. This is not a phone conversation. I'm waiting, Ada answered briefly and hung up. Ada, born Adeline, was Laka's cousin. Laki was raised by her grandmother, who was a Shovihani, that is, a witch. She was valued and respected not only among her own people. Laki's parents had died, the reason was never given, and the girl was not eager to find out. She knew she would never know the truth, and she didn't remember her parents. Her family was her grandmother. Gradually, Laki had adopted the art of magic and sorcery, and in time had become a Shovihani. Laki's grandmother had 2 children, a son and a daughter. So, Laki is the daughter of the son. Laki did not see her aunt often in her childhood, they lived far away. According to customs, Zara, Laki's aunt, married early and moved to another town. Sometimes she came with her children and her grandmother was always upset afterward. Growing up, Laki realized the reason. Zara didn't want to accept the force and skills from her mother, which hurt her. Zara had a hard time in her husband's family. The constant beatings and worse had turned her from a beauty into a monster. She had 4 children, Ada being the middle one. Adelina was very different from her relatives and was the black sheep of the Tabor. She had her share of trouble. One day when Ada was 7, she ran away from home and went to her grandmother's house. How the child managed to get almost 500 kilometers away is not quite clear, but it is a fact. The grandmother, of course, left her granddaughter behind. With Laki, they became best friends. Zara agreed with her mother and left her daughter, obviously sensing something. Just a couple weeks after Ada's escape, Zara died. She was beaten to death by her husband's relatives. Her grandmother took it hard and promised to punish those responsible. After all, no one was jailed, not even detained. These people do not like the authorities and will not give up their own. Time passed and the house where these subhumans lived burned down. Everyone died except Zara's children. Such miracles. Everyone realized where the wind was blowing from and preferred to keep silent so as not to get in the hot hand of the Shovihani. So Ada and Laki began to grow up together. By the way, Ada turned out to be a talented herbalist and she had her own powers. She was also able to predict fate and see things that were hidden from ordinary eyes from the age of 5. Both were educated. Ada became a botanist. Every year, Ada left the city, as she put it, for the fields. Over the years, she traveled almost the entire country in search of plants. And this year she went to some god-forsaken place, an almost extinct village. There were almost no inhabitants left, surviving as best they could. But there, according to some old reports, an unusual plant grows there. It was thought to be extinct, growing only in this area. Ada was looking at a social media feed one day, just flipping through it without really looking. but her eyes suddenly caught on the pale blue flowers in the girl's hands. From there, Ada began her search, and that's how she found herself in the village. On the day of her sister's arrival, Ada laid out the cards and saw a terrible picture. Her sister was in danger. Lockie wanted to go by car, but she didn't dare. Her hands were not fully healed. Ada explained the way, but by car. The train was leaving early in the morning, then she had to get from the station to the village somehow. She didn't dare bother Ada to meet her. There was hardly anyone in the carriage at this early hour, and Lockie dozed off. She saw the picture in the cemetery again. She had taken the witch's harness off Marina and fallen into the fire with her arms out. Had she fallen herself? Hadn't Marina helped her? And now that harness is on her, bound her powers, she can't defend or attack now. And worse, at this point she was more helpless than an infant. The picture became clear and logical. Ada could probably help her. At least help her remove the harness. And then she would deal with Marina according to her own laws. The electric train stopped smoothly at the platform. Not numerous passengers left the cars. When the train announced its departure, it moved on. On the platform, except for Lockie, there were 3 people left. 2 elderly grandmothers with baskets and a young girl. "Excuse me, how do I get to Nicotino?" Lockie asked the girl. "The bus doesn't go there," warned the girl. "On foot, through the forest and the cemetery. You'll get there quickly. At least give me directions." The stranger looked at Lockie strangely, as if studying her. Her eyes were not ordinary, light hazel, which rapidly darkened and became almost black. Something she saw in Lockie. Lockie, in turn, felt herself being scanned and could do nothing. She had never felt so vulnerable. The 2 old ladies, meanwhile, were watching the young women closely. "I'm going there myself so we can go together." The stranger looked at Lockie point blank. "My name is Magda." "That's an unusual name," mumbled Lockie. "Mom wanted it that way. Shall we go? Are those women going there too? The local ones? These ones?" Magda grinned unkindly. "I don't know them." For some reason, Lockie felt uncomfortable at the words of her new acquaintance. Magda abruptly turned around and walked towards the forest. They walked in silence for a while. Magda glanced at Lockie every now and then, as if she were waiting for something. The gypsy turned around and noticed the old women behind them, following them. The path winded through the trees and led to a huge stone which was like a guardian blocking the way. Lockie felt uncomfortable and scared. Magda nodded at the stone and spoke. "It's not far from here to the graveyard. Let's hurry before they catch up with us," Magda said, pulling Lockie with her. They were almost running through the forest. "What's going on?" Out of breath, Lockie stopped. "Do you want to live?" Magda asked a strange question. Lockie nodded. "Then let's hurry." They almost ran again, and in about 10 minutes they came to the cemetery. Lockie even froze in bewilderment. The cemetery began in the forest, getting lost among the trees. Magda was almost dragging Lockie behind her. Lockie stopped and looked closer. She saw shadows creeping, many of them. Dogs? Or wolves? Still, the place was in the middle of nowhere, and there were plenty of animals. Perhaps that's what Magda had feared. At another time, Lockie wouldn't have raised an eyebrow over such a small thing. But not today. "You can't run, they'll definitely jump," she said quietly. "I'm not going to wait for them to eat me." "Are those dogs? How long have you had this going on?" "Dogs? Are you blind? Doesn't look like wolves to me." "Yeah, I thought you were smarter than that." Magda shook her head. "They're not animals. Werewolves," Lockie guessed. "Finally!" Magda shook her hands. "They won't attack until it's light out. But here at the graveyard, they're on their own land, you never know." Lockie's heart was pounding like crazy. Her brain was frantically thinking and analyzing. She was trying to make sense of her problems, and it turned out she'd made even bigger ones. "How far to the village?" "My sister's waiting for me there." "The one with the herbs?" "Uh-huh. If you're lucky, you'll be hugging your sister in about 20 minutes. With luck, the gray shadows let them go and the girls reached the village safely. As Ada had said, there was hardly any population left. Most of the houses were in a dilapidated state, without roofs or doors. There were 7 yards in a small patch of land where life was evident. A flock of geese perched in the shade of a lilac bush, a shaggy dog stretched out in the road dust, a huge black cat sat on a bench in front of the house. "Sis!" Lockie exhaled a sigh of relief. Ada looked at her sister with concern and bewilderment. The woman who was walking beside Lockie waved goodbye and left, but they didn't see which house she had gone into. Ada was seriously concerned about her sister's condition. While Lockie recounted her adventures on the road, her sister brewed herbal tea from her own recipe. I knew there was something evil in this place right away. As soon as I arrived, I stumbled upon it on a walk. You know, my line of work takes me everywhere, but they didn't touch me for some reason. I actually suspect they're all like that around here. Not exactly werewolves, but they're definitely in contact with evil forces, Ada told me. We'll deal with that later. I'm the important thing right now, Lockie answered. Yeah, you were treated like a first grader. How did that happen? I must have gotten cocky because it never happened before. Anyway, I understand from your story and what I saw, Marina is a witch. A curse put on her family for a serious offense, and the harness was put on her for a reason. She's managed to curse you, put locks on you that her sorcery can't even see. Your power is now bound by the harness, and they want to kill you. Is that correct? You didn't miss anything? No. I just don't understand Marina's motive. I thought I helped her. She sure did. You're the victim, and this lady deliberately set you up. Did you destroy the harness? No. Did you see it burn? No. Well, there's your answer. I think she pushed you into the fire, maybe not even with her own hands. Her defenses are strong, so you didn't see her magical power. How did that even happen? I've always seen them. Lockie was upset. She was sick. Her burns hurt. The skin on her face and body felt like it had dried up. Her eyes were sunken, and her lips looked like skulls. Even her hair, her luxurious mane, had already faded and looked unkempt. Overall, Lockie felt tired and weak. She understood what that was about, but she couldn't do it without help. You know, I'll do a little magic in my kitchen, then you eat and rest. We'll think tomorrow. Ada stroked her sister's head, and an unpleasant feeling of fear settled in her soul. Ada fried potatoes and brought some pickles. A neighbor gave them to her. The kitchen in the house was small, but quite comfortable. In general, there were 3 rooms and a kitchen in the house. The house was obviously rebuilt several times because a bathroom and a terrace were added. There was no gas in the village. Everyone used cylinders. Electricity was also gone, only poles were left. But even here there was a way out. A generator. As the owner of the house explained, his mother lived here. She refused to leave, so he arranged her life. Only in this house there was a TV set, and all the grandmothers used to come to the late mistress's house to watch soap operas. Ada didn't watch soap operas, but she didn't break the tradition. After dinner, Lockie lay down in her room, and Ada closed herself in one of the rooms. It was a room she had set up for her needs, an alchemist's study where miracles are worked. While Lockie slept, her sister came up with a solution. Wake up, dawn is coming. Ada woke her sister early. Did you find something? Uh-huh, let's go. There was a table on the terrace, on which there was now a basin of water, candles everywhere, melted wax floating in the water. At the other end of the table were books, some of them old-fashioned. You've been here all night? Lockie wondered. She was braiding her braid. Here, take these. Ada handed her silver-braided threads. These are incantation threads for protection. Lockie obediently took the threads and quickly wove them into the braid. She looked tired. What did you find out? Judging from you, nothing good. On the one hand, yes, but there is good news. Tell me, Marina is not Marina. It's funny to say that, of course, but she's not a young girl. Her deeds were such that one of her victims found a stronger witch and asked for help. Marina takes life energy and youth through the witch's harness. You know what I mean? She's been doing it for years, killed a lot of people. And then a strong witch bound Marina herself with a witch's harness. That is, she was struck with her own weapon. For many years Marina was chained. The curse of the Priaka really has something to do with her, but much more importantly, another. She looks 25 years old, but in fact she is well into her 80s. Now let me ask you a question. Who do you think was the witch who bound Marina with the magic harness? I don't know, but I think I can guess. That's right, smart girl. It was our great-grandmother. I think there's a page missing from the diary, or there's more notebooks. Great-grandmother bound Marina with a witch's harness. Can you imagine how happy that witch was when she realized who was in front of her? She was so happy. What did you come up with? The harness has to come off before you move yourself. We'll summon her and lock her in a magic trap while we remove the harness. And to remove it, I'll brew a potion from a witch's flower, Ada told me as she went along. Yeah, you're not a witch, you're the Great Witch. Don't flatter me, you're the Great Witch, and I'm more of an alchemist with the pruning shears, Ada laughed. Okay, is there a witch's flower around here? Lockie asked. Yeah, that's the thing that really bugs me about the old ladies around here. Their gardens and front gardens are full of it. Derman's, as you know, is not a popular flower. Even here in the garden, there's a lot of it. Ada's face was grim, and her black eyes seemed darker than night. We'll deal with that when I get my strength back. Come on, tell me your plan. They spent the first half of the day preparing. The first thing Ada did was send her sister out for fresh milk. As soon as Lockie knocked on the door of the neighbor's house across the street, an old acquaintance opened the door. "Magda. Hi. Hi." Magda smiled, but for some reason Lockie felt creepy. "My sister sent me to get some milk. Frankly, I'm surprised they still keep cows around here." Magda thought about something for a couple of seconds, then nodded and invited the Shovikani to come in. "You'll be lost without a farm. You must think we're crazy to live in such a remote area. It's your right and your choice. I was just sent for milk." Magda nodded, and a few minutes later brought a 3-liter cylinder of fresh milk. At the same time she offered cottage cheese and sour cream. Lockie did not refuse, when she would have more cottage cheese from the village. While she was at Magda's, Ada was busy with the potion. She explained to Lockie that the method she had used earlier would not work. The table was already filled with prepared candles, needles, open pins, dark crystals, and incense smoking in the smoker. Ada shut off the generator, the gas cylinder, opened all the doors. Lockie, with her hair loose, completely naked, stood in the center of the earthen circle. Milk was boiling on the stove. Ada threw needles and pins, casting a summons on them. She would come, she wouldn't go anywhere. The main thing was to get in. Lockie and her sister had spent almost an hour before the action to show the other reality to Marina. How will she show up? It's very simple. She is perfectly able to move in the looking glass. This Lockie realized even at home, when in the middle of the night saw someone in her room, someone in the mirror. It was Marina. Now she just hung the mirror on the outdoor sink. "The doors are open. You can't believe people after that." There was a quiet knock on the door. "It was unlocked," Ada shouted. "Lockie, are you in here?" Marina's voice was soft. "Don't think anything of it, just checking in. They gave me the address at the city apartment." Lockie continued to stand stoically in the room with her eyes closed. The stupefying potion was beginning to take effect. Soon she would be able to penetrate Marina's consciousness. Ada froze in anticipation of Marina's actions. Marina cautiously took a step, and it was as if she ran into an obstacle. She entered the house, but she could not take another step. Light flashes appeared in the darkness. They were sparking and approaching Marina. The sparks became more and more. They surrounded the girl. Marina suddenly screamed and fell to the floor. Her body shook in convulsions. Ada, seeing all this, did not even move. In the meantime, Lockie penetrated Marina's mind and consciousness. The sparks of fire were Shovihani. She wandered through the corridors of the witch's memory, saw the past, all the deeds that had brought so much grief. All of her victims were screaming in her voice, begging for justice. Lockie almost got lost in the labyrinths of this man's memory. It would take her a long time to clean herself up after such a journey. There were so many vices and abominations she had never seen before. At last, she found what she was looking for, a carefully hidden and disguised secret. The secret of her life and her youth. It was time to go back. After a few minutes, Lockie took a deep breath. She was back, but Marina lay unmoving on the floor. She seemed dead, even her nose was pointy. Lockie pulled on a long shirt and stepped towards her sister. The two of them bent over Marina. "You've got a strong potion. You're still as dizzy as after a merry-go-round," Lockie complained. "Don't complain, get the vial." The two of them poured in a drop of the same potion based on dermona and red fire moss. This compound will reveal Marina's true colors. In the vegetable garden, Ada built a fire and prepared a powder of crushed stinging vines that would end the wicked witch's journey. They dragged Marina over to the fire and laid her on the ground, still unconscious. Or at least she seemed to be. Ada took out a special tube, filled it with powder and blew it into Marina's face. Marina inhaled, was silent for a second, and then suddenly shrieked. That's how a mortally wounded animal screams. Marina was changing before their eyes, aging and getting worse, and now she was an old woman in front of them. The witch fell silent. Everything was over. Lockie involuntarily cried with joy that at last everything was over. Lockie stared at the fire. The fire was burning all the way up to the sky. They had already buried what was left of the marina in an untraveled area, a place where humans were unlikely to appear. Shovihani could feel her power returning and filling her with life and energy. Even her general physical well-being improved immediately. The burns on her eyes were healing not only because of the force, but also because of the magical ointment from Ada. Ada had prepared a regenerating cream especially for her sister, based on herbs and some secret ingredients. The result is on her face and body. Yes, the potion brewed on the witch's flower didn't just help, it saved. Lockie promised her sister to come back in a couple of days to help her deal with the local evil.